The Heed the Call podcast has a very high percentage of smiles and glory holes.
We do. What of it? Welcome to Heed the Call with Dan Hanzus and Marc Sessler as we get through this dark week, post-championship Sunday, and ahead of Super Bowl 59. Oh, wait, did I just mess up? No, I didn't. I'll tell you why in a second. Marc, what's up?
Well, now I'm confused by the rules. Am I allowed to say Super Bowl as well, or just you?
You can say it.
Yeah.
Anyone can say it until we close the vault.
Okay.
And then once the vault is closed, no one says it. Marc,
So get it out now.
let's welcome in our regular Thursday compadres, Jourdan Rodrigue and Michael-Shawn Dugar of The Athletic.
How goes it?
What's up? A little bit of discourse before the show about Marc's shirt, which is wild and different, and it's out there, and I respect it. As a man that dresses very conservatively in general, your style, Marc, is a breath of fresh air. There was also some discussion initiated on your part that you perhaps bought a woman's shirt, which explained why it was ill-fitting in certain areas and contours.
Yes. It just feels that way to me. It's different than some of my other shirts, and there's like a little clasp up here at the top that just you don't see on typical men's clothing that I have. So I proposed that maybe it was a woman's shirt, but then I received a text from the room next door, because you can hear this show apparently. That must be annoying. Alerting me that it is not a woman's shirt. So fact checked, right?
And it was a woman, correct, that had alerted you of that, which I feel like gives her extra credibility. Jourdan,
she knows.
You are a woman.
Nicely done, Dan.
Yes.
Well spotted.
Nailed it. Do women's blouses have clasps?
Commonly referred to as the chastity clasp, to prevent the male gaze from interfering with our brain waves. You know,
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
Sure.
I don't respect
it's
it,
on
but I
us.
understand
It's
why it
really on
exists.
us to set,
to
make sure that the men are not affected by our appearance. That's totally us. On
And
us.
I know Mike has nothing in his wardrobe
Where you
where
got
there's
your
a
sex
clasp.
addiction? You got a problem with sex?
That would just be my
Sex,
guess.
you addicted to sex? A sex addiction or something?
Oh, that's an amazing drop. This is not related, but it reminds me of it. I've been watching a lot of more Disney movies because I'm at home with my daughter now
Sure.
that the season's over. We watched Mulan, the original, like twice in the last 5 days.
Nice.
And it's a very adult concept. Like Eddie Murphy's little dragon character refers to her thing as a drag show. And she's referred to as a cross-dresser in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Very adult theme there of sexism and gender roles. That was deep. On top of there just being death in a Disney movie, people getting stabbed and stuff. That was deep.
Wow.
But her getting called a cross-dresser made me think of that when
Well, Marc, it
talking
made you
about
think of Marc. Yeah, I get that.
Oh, great. Well, for the people listening to this on audio, their minds must be full of images.
Yeah, and you should absolutely go over to YouTube and subscribe to Heed the Call and check out Marc's top. By the way, one other thought before we move on, because we got to get into the show. We got a lot to get to. I do think whether it's a chastity clasp or whatever it is, it could also be a hook for a vampire's cape. So for you, that I feel like that could be something. Maybe this is perfect for you.
For me, that's how I'll walk around town wearing the shirt that way.
And I think what we all really mean to say in this intro is be yourself and we love you,
Yes.
whoever you are.
Whoever you are.
Yeah, you're definitely, Marc, not the only person in Hollywood that would be walking around with a Dracula's cape thinking
I
it's a
mean,
normal
if I
thing to
walked
do.
a block that way, I would not. It'd be the reverse of standing out. There's a Spider-Man walking up and down the street. There's a fat Spider-Man.
Right.
That's the latest guy.
Is that Gnarly Elmo still there? I've been wondering. There's a guy in a Gnarly Elmo suit, and it's a bit matted, smells a little funky, some stainage going.
Haven't
he just
seen
seems
that
like he's
character.
been through some stuff,
Haven't seen that character of late. A lot of superheroes. There's a guy that plays Michael-Shawn and looks the part to some degree, but also plays Kobe on some days, so it's confusing. But these are for people that are here for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, I get that.
For the visitors.
I would like to if you can get a photo of the husky Spider-Man.
he's got a big pot belly. It's just not a good. He's got to figure out a different type of direction here.
You know, speaking for the
What
other.
the hell is even that?
Speaking of, like, you know, the Zaftig male culture out there, I'd like to say that just know your limits, and wearing spandex is something. Well, then again, listen, Jourdan, we don't want to shame anybody either. I feel like we're being very inclusive in this conversation. I'm not going to now say don't wear it because you're a heavyset male, but maybe if I don't know, maybe there's a different superhero you could be. That's all.
Mr. Incredible is pleasingly plump.
There you go.
You know, he wore spandex.
Think outside the box.
All right, this is the Don't Say Super Bowl episode. You will be penalized if you say it, so please do not say it. Before we get into that section of the show, which is the bulk of the episode, a couple of notes. First of all, I got an update. We haven't mentioned this, Mark. Our good friend and former colleague, whom I adore and think is one of the more talented people, and I wish I got to work with her more when we were at NFL together, Rachel Bonetta. She is indeed the hosting this event at Sports Drink in New Orleans, where we're doing 2 live shows.
Yeah.
And so Rachel is who reached out to us, and she's going to be involved with the shows there. And you can get tickets right now. Follow the link in the description or our socials. I got a positive update from Rachel that tickets are selling fast. There's a limited amount left. We have 2 shows, one at 5 and one at 7. So make sure for our Super Bowl shows from New Orleans to get that done before everybody gets to New Orleans and is looking for something to do. And then bang, you're frozen out of what could be one of the great live shows that's ever existed.
Well, I think by the time you'd get to New Orleans, unless you lived in New Orleans, the tickets would be gone, even during the flight across from wherever you live to New Orleans. So you've got to act on this now. And Bonetta, we've done live shows with Bonetta before. She's a legit stand-up comedian in LA now and throughout the country. So it is the right person to be linked with. It's going to be a good show. Good shows.
Be there or be square. Justin, any other Super Bowl related news? Like, I think both teams are fairly healthy. Is there anything hanging out there as we move away from Super Bowl conversation and seal up the vault? I know I'm kind of catching you flat-footed here, but I know you're also very talented. Jordan's throwing her finger up. She's going to save Justin if it has to happen. J-Man, what do you got?
I'm here for you, buddy.
All right, we're throwing it to Jourdan.
Brandon Graham was just activated off injured reserve. There's a potential that he could play in this game. They are leaving the door wide open. The Eagles are leaving the door wide open for that. Obviously, he has some history in the big game.
Yes, he does. He played a central role in the defeating of the great Belichick and Brady in the Super Bowl a few years back. Brandon Graham, how old is Graham? He's 36. He's turning 37 in a couple of months. This could be one of those things where he goes out there. And wasn't it what is the injury? It was like a muscle tear, right? Let's see. Tore his triceps against the Rams. November 26th. So obviously trying to come back from that is very dicey to re-aggravating injury. But maybe, Mike, it's one of those things where I'm turning 37. I'm getting my ass on that field. It might be my last chance ever to play in the big game. And if he re-injures it, he goes off into the sunset. And if he doesn't, maybe it turns into one of the great stories of the game.
Yeah, I think this is 10 years. At some point, this will be 10 years to the day that the Seahawks lost Super Bowl 49. And there's a bunch of things that stand out from that. But on the injury front, the Legion of Boom was very banged up. Sherm basically couldn't feel his elbow. Coming out of the NFC Championship game, Cam Chancellor twerked his knee like the day before the game, I think. And something was going on with Earl Thomas as well. I forget what it is. But I bring that up to say there was no chance those guys were playing. Like, Sherm legitimately would have just, if they were like, cut my arm off like Bucky in the Avengers, I'll go play against Brady. I feel like that's how a lot of these guys view stuff. Like, it's the Super Bowl, cut my toe off, give me some drugs, whatever, needs to happen, I will play in the Super Bowls, especially when you're a guy like, over 30.
And remember, Brandon Graham had that huge strip sack of Tom Brady when they played each other in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So
Jourdan kind of alluded to that moments ago.
I think it would be kind of cool.
Well,
the
checking
clasp,
back into the show.
The clasp was cutting off some of the circulation. It's the contours.
Tough chastity clasp situation for Mark there.
Yeah, no, I'm out of my element. So
the cool thing, I think, even if he can't play a lot of snaps,
he's a top 10 football insider.
Sassy, I love it. what was I even going to say? Oh,
Sorry,
I think it'd
if
be
he can't
cool.
play a lot of snaps, yeah.
Oh yeah, it'd be cool even if he can't play a lot of snaps to suit up and be on the sideline to run out of the tunnel. Like even those things to be eligible, as long as they're not obviously taking someone else's key roster spot and moving some of that math around on the game day actives. Like I just think it'd be really cool story for Brandon Graham, who also seems like one of like the all-time good dudes in the NFL as well.
Not cool for the guy that gets deactivated, though.
Fair point. Fair point. And also, it's pretty easy to run out of the tunnel at the Superdome because Mark and I were able to do it uncredentialed for field access after the last Super Bowl, which was kind of quite an achievement, Mark, as I recall. We kind of ducked through a curtain. I feel like even from the time of the last Super Bowl till now, you would take 14 tranq darts to the throat if you even attempted to do that.
We'd be killed.
Optical scan. So yeah.
Well, that place was a house
in New
of chaos because the lights had gone out for 20 minutes or something. Like there was a lot of structural problems, and we took advantage of that and just hoodwinked our way onto the field.
Unbelievable. Now that's journalism. You got the two great athletic writers here and reporters, but don't forget that Mark and I once snuck onto the Superdome field after Super Bowl 47.
Who could forget?
All right. Is it time to close the vault? Any other thoughts about the Super Bowl? The last thing I will share is that I know we've mentioned it, but to be clear, we are going to be in New Orleans for Super Bowl week, Monday to Friday, and we're going to be staying at we've deemed it the Dog House. Underdog got this big old mansion in the French Quarter that we're going to be not only staying in the house, which is kind of interesting because I get to see what Mark looks like when he goes to the bathroom first thing in the morning. We also are going to be doing the show from the house. And we got Zumwalt coming along. We got Zumwalt a bungalow here. And Jourdan's gonna be joining us for a show. If Money Mike were in town, he absolutely would. And you'll be in our thoughts, Mike. And maybe we can have Mike involved in some way for next Thursday's show.
Well, we need the Olsen parlay still. We have to have that for the Super Bowl.
We need the
because
three-legger.
Greg Olsen should be in the booth.
That's
Let me just
absolutely it.
add.
Mike,
So
let's work something out. I'll take it offline. We need the Money Mike three-legged parlay and game prediction and all that stuff. So Mike will be involved in some capacity next week. But we'll be in New Orleans for 3 shows in addition to the 2 live shows at Sports Drink. So we'll be busy. Super Bowl 59, time to close up the vault. Don't say it. Don't say it. Pretty good.
that's a vault.
Pretty good.
An ornate vault.
I kind of wanted the last sound, Justin, to be like the spinning of the big Vegas vault where I was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's telling you he's not thrilled with what you produced there.
Well, we were working with limited time this morning.
Always are.
If you go to YouTube and search vault sound
If
effect,
we do.
this is what comes out. Sound familiar?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, can't use that.
That's IP that we can't tread upon because we've already taken it and used it elsewhere. All right. Let's get into it. So the theme, obviously we don't say the thing that everybody wants to say this time of year. But what we did was kept it open-ended. And this is going to be each of the 4 of us, me, Mark, Jourdan, and Mike, are going to introduce a topic that is completely unrelated to the big game or anything connected to it, right? So is that allowed, by the way? Can I say the big game?
Yes.
Should we set any other more ground rules? Is it just those 2 words? You know what I mean?
I did build a rather elaborate alarm alert drop, and I'd love to actually be able to hit it. So the wider parameters for things that you can't say, I would be in favor of, but it's your show.
Okay.
I
Mark,
love
you
the
decide.
drop, so I would just take the fault if you needed it.
Justin's trying to goad us. Justin wants mistakes to occur for the show element. I get that.
Yes.
I think we try to avoid big game 2 because that's too easy. We're still talking about this other thing when we're alluding to it as the big game. It's too close.
Yeah. 20 plus episodes in, Money Mike, that you've been involved with Heed the Call, and the speed in which Justin's Titans helmet spins, still alarming, right? And off-putting and uncomfortable, right?
I don't mind it. I like the idea of we got some. I like the insertion of fandom into the discussion. You know, it brings a different element. You know, when you're coming from the media side, like me, where I'm just like straight down the middle, or you know, or rooting for just individual people I know. But like, yeah, let's bring some fandom into it.
That's like the classic beat reporter. Like, hey, do you still love the game? Listen, I don't root for teams. That's just laundry. I root for stories.
And just people I like, or
that's
if
like
I'm
way too accurate.
or if I'm a degenerate, where you got your money,
right?
But, yeah, or just people I know. Like I talked to Clint Hurt a little bit before the NFC Championship game. I was like, yo, man, happy for you. Go out there, do your thing. Was very happy for Bobby as well, playing in that game. Obviously, only one of them could win, but you know, stuff like I root for guys like that, guys.
But I not to dig a little further in, but I'm not referring to the fact that there is a Titans helmet in the background or that Justin is open in his fandom. I'm just talking about the alarming rate in which the rotation, it keeps coming back over and over. And that is what I have an issue with.
Relentless.
I like it too. I like that as well. Listen, Justin's got my support today.
One thing we should note for the record of the show is that Mike refuses in the best way to be dragged into your shenanigans, Dan.
No, he does.
So this is the best. It's the no shenanigans for Mike.
Shenanigans, that's nice. But also, if you know me, I'm just going to continue until I get Mike.
This will come up multiple times.
He's like going to be like a dog with a bone on this. So it's like, but I love it. Mike, you just float above it, and it's just wonderful. Like,
why has he got to be above it? Is that the way you look at it, Jourdan?
Yeah, that is the way I look at it, Dan.
Yeah. I'll get Mike. I'm going to keep working on him. Don't forget that I'm an asshole. All right, let's get into it. We all have topics. I'll get us going, all right? Because I know we talked a lot about it on the Tuesday show with Connor Orr as we went through a lot of the press conferences. And by the way, speaking of press conferences, coming up, and this is why you got to be on Patreon, patreon.com/heedthecall. Connor Orr will be holding a live press conference to address the news, obviously the disturbing report involving his 2016 Chrysler Town and Country, perhaps being a dangerous vehicle to be identifying and using as your family car. So he's going to hold a press conference, and Mark and I are going to serve as media members for it. And so you do not want to miss that, and you need to be on Patreon to have access to it Friday morning.
I think some tough questions need to be asked, some trenchant queries of Connor, because he seems to be wavering in the next move is with this dangerous time bomb of a vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right, here we go. Anyway, we talked a lot about the new coaches on Tuesday. I wanted to give my official, and what makes it important is that it's official, the official juice rankings for each of the new head coaching hires. It's a scale 0.0 out of 10.0, and I'm going to move through it, fairly quickly. I don't want us to get bogged down by each position, but I want to go through them all, and I'm going to. Should I go? What do you think, Jourdan? Should I go from the lowest juice to the highest juice, or the highest juice to the lowest juice?
Well, I think we all know who the highest is for you, so definitely start with the bottom and kind of where the shenanigan zone is, and then move up.
This is going to be a slam dunk for like 360 windmill on Rodrigue because she tries to put me in the box. You're wrong. We'll get to it. We'll start with the lowest, though. Okay. And listen, this isn't stunning, but the Brian Schottenheimer hire in Dallas, I'm going to go Shoddy. I'm going to go 3.2 on the juice scale for Shoddy. Just because one thing, Mike, that really bothers me about this hire is they make a decision. It just doesn't pass the logic smell test. They make a decision that it's time to move on from the McCarthy era after 5 years, and then you just promote his top offensive assistant. And if you watched the Cowboys games last year, like the functionality of the offense was not at a high level even before CD got banged up and Dak went out for the year. So from a juice perspective, and I'm not saying it's definitely going to fail, but from a juice perspective, 3.2, I can't go higher than that.
I feel, I was just telling one of my Cowboys friends, my friend who's a Cowboys fan, this. I feel like I'm in a weird spot with the Shoddy thing. I'm actually like one of the few people who thinks it'll work out. Because like the last time I covered Shoddy, which was 2020, when he was the coordinator of the Seahawks, it was great. The offense was great. And he was caught in some like power dynamics with like the let Russ cook stuff and Russ and Pete, and there's all this beef. But like I thought was going to be a good head coach. I actually wrote a story about it, I think at the time. We were asking Russell about it. Like, hey, you think Shoddy will make a head coach? Like it was a thing. The idea of Shoddy being a thing, I still have that in my brain because I was there for it. And then obviously he got fired for philosophical differences between he and Pete. But I never thought that was like his fault. So I actually think he's going to be okay. I think he really knows ball, smart dude. He's leader guy. He may not come off as that, but he is leader guy. I think he's already getting the right blueprint for the best setup in the NFL. Low key is like offensive play caller, head coach with failed head coach as your DC. That feels like that's like going to be like the
Good
cheat
call.
code to get like continuity on your staff, because that guy's already failed as DC and no one can poach you. He's failed as a head coach and no one can poach you as the offensive guy. You get those two together, you'll rock.
Like I think the reverse would be like it could be to his advantage to have this low juice rating of 3.2 that you gave, because people are expecting nothing of him. And I can think of like when Mike Holmgren went to the Browns, or like this is ancient, but Mike Ditka went to the Saints, and the juice rating there was through the ceiling, and they both floundered tremendously. So it's like I kind of like being under the radar as a first time coach. He's not under the radar because it's the Cowboys. That's obviously true, but like low expectations around the guy. No one knows what to expect, and they think he's going to be out of there in a year or two. Never know.
I think you could see.
Yeah, go ahead, Jourdan.
Oh, I think you could see already see who he is as a strategist, because he let Jerry Jones take the soundbite heat. It's interesting. That is the way to play it.
I don't think he had a choice, by the way.
No, that's his name. That is the way to play it. But he kind of came off as sort of just like very just a quieter personality. Anyone would when sitting next to Jerry Jones. But I think he played it really correctly in that he didn't try to say anything that would break through all of the things that Jerry Jones was saying for 73 minutes during that press conference. And instead, I think he's going to be one of those guys that kind of just plots quietly. And then you're going to see some of that unfold. I thought that was the right way to play it, because we're going to be talking about some of these other guys who either won their press conference or are in the news for things that don't really matter as it pertains to what they actually plan to do with their teams moving forward.
Be a coach.
Yes. And just to be clear.
You didn't give me that time, Justin. I kept my train of thought.
Just to be clear, not saying I think Shoddy will fail, just that the juice ain't too high. Up next, I have Liam Cohen, Jacksonville Jaguars, and I have him at a 6.7 out of 10 on my scale.
Duval.
Juice. And that obviously got a lot of the buzz. But again, we're not against genial gingers here on Heed the Call, so we're not going to dock him points for that. And I'm not going to dock him points for how he got to Jacksonville, which seemed a little shisty based on all the reporting out there. But you know what? Liam didn't want to miss his window and end up like Brian Schottenheimer waiting 20 years for his chance. It does still, I guess what hurts me in terms of juice and excitement for the team is it is like I'm doing a rewatch of The Sopranos with my wife right now. When Carmela tries to build the spec house, but then she uses the wrong wood, and then it turns into like this unsellable eyesore, and it becomes like this testament in the middle of the woods to just her personal failure and how she needs Tony to be successful, and underlines all the things that she struggles with on the show. So anyway, to me, that's what limits the juice. The higher makes sense, and I give Liam a pass for how he exited Tampa. But Jags fans, I feel like Jourdan still right to have concerns, and so it just a little bit of just pause.
Yeah, I really like the way that Liam's Buccaneers offense worked out this year. I like their scheme. I talked about it a lot as like a pet team with Mark here on this show. The run game with Bucky Irving, and then he also had, I think, some of the luxury of having really good players at certain key positions, including Bucky emerging at running back, having those receivers at least for part of the year. Baker Mayfield had one of his best seasons, in part his collaboration with Liam Cohen. That offensive line is just a group of badasses as well. And you have somebody in Todd Bowles who's taking your mind completely away from anything you need to think about for the defense. And also it's a well-run organization from a front office structure, which now Liam Cohen will have his hands in every single part of that infrastructure because of the way that Balky exited and was completely, even though he protests too much at his press conference, was completely connected to his hire and perhaps contingent upon that. So I'm interested in this fit and this system. I think it's a friendly market to try and fail maybe as a first time head coach and figure out what you are good at, what you're not good at, what you need more delegation for. But I am interested in this because he has a quarterback. He has a couple of really good skill players. He's got Brian Thomas Jr., and that's a great player to have. But there's a lot of areas to figure out on that team that he didn't necessarily inherit in Tampa Bay. And in terms of like his earnestness and his personality, like that's just who Liam is. Like he's a good vibes guy, and he is a smart guy. Now I am going to keep a close eye on this because I do think that we saw firsthand in Houston that there's a Bobby Slowick syndrome as well, where you have a piece of this offense that you've deployed successfully, and then you don't have the second, third, or fourth versions of that offense. And so after this year, you know, with Trevor Lawrence, and I've always wanted to see him in this type of system, and that's going to be great. But do you have the second version, the third version, the fourth version of this offense? You haven't actually been in these playbooks for multiple years where other coaches who are part of this coaching tree have evolved this forward. So I'm curious to see what that looks like.
Well said. Next, I want to tee Mike up on this one. I got Pete Carroll to the Raiders. I'm going to put it at, I struggled with this one because it's a little bit of an unusual hire. Let's face it, and how these things go. 6.9.
Nice.
Pete Carroll. Listen, sensible hire to me. Carroll's an adult in the room. Really, he's the senior citizen in the room, and the Raiders can use that after Gruden got his head chopped off. Their words, not mine. And then you have the 9/11 like McDaniels era, Josh McDaniels era, then the unserious Antonio Pierce experiment. Carroll will not be a disaster, and I think, as we talked about Tuesday, it could be a useful bridge to the organization. But like I can't get away from Mike. The only thing that would temper the juice here is like looking at. We're going to get to the Bears in a little bit. The idea of this like hotshot young play caller, and you have a former number 1 overall pick and some other pieces, and you send them to work. In this case, you have an older coach and no clear path to a quarterback answer right now. And I just wonder for especially for a team that has not won a division title or even, you know, a playoff game in 22 years, like sensible hire. I get it. But how excited am I right now as a Raiders fan? I'm not sure. There's a ton of juice right now. Where do you come down? Obviously, you know Carroll way better than any of us.
Yeah, I think Pete, like the way I view head coach, like whether you're going to be good or not, is are you leader guy? Because and leader guy is hard to assess. You know, everyone kind of knows scheme to a high level for the most part. But leader guy is really tested when things start to go wrong. And so I saw Pete handle a lot of stuff that went wrong or went awry that never really got out or ended up not being a big deal. You know, guys punching each other before the biggest game of their lives. You know, in 2013 they go out and win by 35 in that game. You know, so there was just so much stuff with like his running back not talking to him, everyone hating his quarterback, all of the badass personalities that he had on defense, and then all the stuff that went wrong towards the end. And their floor was still high. They had all this turmoil, and they were still a higher floor team than half the league. You know, he was basically the West Coast Mike Tomlin in that sense. Mike also, who does a good job of handling chaos. Mike Tomlin does. So I think that is where you gotta be that in any situation. But I feel like there's certain franchises where like you really gotta be prepared for just anything. I was talking to Sean Reed, covers the Raiders for The Athletic, does good work. Like all of the things that he's had to deal with since he's been the Raiders beat writer, since I think it's like 2021. There was like, there's Gruden, there's Henry Ruggs, there's that other guy who was one of their cornerbacks who was like threatened to kill someone via Instagram DM. He had all those guns in his closet.
Arnett.
Yes, Arnett. Yeah, Arnett. Chandler Jones just randomly.
Jones,
just naked and stuff, spazzing out on like Instagram Live. Like this wasn't a controversy, but then like they had Carl Nassib on their team, which ended up being like a footnote at what would be a national story on any other team. They just had so much stuff, and when you're the Raiders coach or any coach, you have to be able to just know how to handle all that and put a product on the field. And that's where I think Pete is going to have a high floor there. He's going to be leader guy. And so I have less concerns about him, age aside, than half these coaches that got hired, because he's proven to be able to just handle when shit hits the fan.
6.9 is fair. I'd go higher because I think it's the cleanest move the Raiders have made this century. I think it's going to work. That team desperately needs structure, organization. The Brady factor matters. I think we see already that matters to them. And so I think the Carroll thing is going to be a success. He's kind of pretty foolproof, and he's going to improve the team. So Raiders fans who have waited for this for so long, they're kind of like the Cowboys. Like, it's a huge deal. And so I'd go higher on this one.
Okay. Up next, Mike Vrabel, Patriots. All right. I am going to go. Oops. 7.0 on Vrabel. There's a little bit of a Trent McNeely energy to this hire. Anybody seen the film Can't Hardly Wait? Coming of age high school film, late 90s. McNeely, play the clip, Justin.
Trent McNeely.
Trip McNeely.
No way, man.
Trip McNeely.
Trip McNeely. Jeez. You were a sexual icon.
Anyway, McNeely was the sexual icon's great. McNeely was the former jock / prom king archetype turned townie who still shows up at the high school parties and is leaning on the glory days. That's my only criticism of the hire, Jourdan, that it is like a crank back the clock and let's remember how cool things used to be when Vrabel and all the other guys are here. Only you don't have Bill and you don't have Tom, and as Justin will attest, that it's not like the Titans era produced any Lombardis or a lot of success in the final years of it when he didn't have the right pieces around him anymore. Justin's holding up a finger, so I will get to you, Justin. But Jourdan, that's my only. I like the hire. It's a smart hire. As I said, I would have been cool if the Jets went with Vrabel too, because he seems like just a steady guy to put in. But there is that one little for an organization that seemed intent on moving away from the Belichick area that they came back.
Did you have something to say, Justin?
I'll get to Justin. I just want to hear Jourdan first.
Oh, I just thought it's good because I think it's actually, he's done a pretty self-aware job of, I think, bringing some people who he knows and trusts in, but also making up for the fact that he did that. So it's like, he goes out and hires Josh McDaniels, who you hear mixed things about him as someone who, in terms of to work with on a coaching staff. And certainly he had no love lost in a lot of the players that he's coached, and certainly has found himself in some situations and orchestrated some situations that are less than ideal. But he also went out and hired people like Thomas Brown and John Stryker, who are two, in my opinion, two really good hires who kind of make up for the fact that now you have Josh McDaniels on your staff, not just from a communication standpoint, but also from a culture building standpoint. And so I think that does benefit Mike Vrabel. I think he went about this process in a more self-aware way than previous Patriots coaches have. So I do think that that this is going to be an interesting staff to watch. And they obviously, I think when you pair even Josh McDaniels, who is tough, to work with, you hear this, but you pair him with a young, talented quarterback. And then you also have people who are really good culture builders and teachers and communicators at the assistant levels as well. I do think that that's a recipe for potential success.
Gravy, what do you got on this? Well, my comments about Vrabel and the Titans, your thoughts?
I can share them. I wasn't actually.
I know what Gravy was doing. I think he thought you came close to a rule break, Dan.
He said really? Lombardis.
Yeah, you were close.
I was like, watch it.
Oh, interesting. We never set the rules in terms of like what the words were, which we'll have to do next year's show.
I think that falls outside the zone of penalty. I would
blind luck though. Blind luck.
It's the
All right.
coach's name, so yes. Like,
All right,
we
up
can't-
next, I do have, not first, as Jourdan wrongly assumed, it is Aaron Glenn of the New York Jets. Does come in second, though. The silver is nice. I got it a 7.2. I've already shared my thoughts. Brings back some pride to the Jets. A homegrown dude. He gets it all. Coming from the Detroit model, which is what, frankly, the Jets hope and dream of assuming themselves. Concern here, Mike, would be the play caller is so important, and the Rodgers question hangs on over everything. I'm just curious. Here's one thing we haven't talked about. I don't know. We don't know how serious they are about Rodgers actually coming back or not. And we know the one thing they definitely aren't going to do, because Glenn made it very clear in his press conference, is it's not Aaron's show anymore. He would just be a guy on the team. But are you kind of going overboard or overcorrective steering if you end up hiring if you're serious about potentially keeping Rodgers, hiring a play caller without talking to Rodgers and connecting those two pieces on any level? Or is that not even a question? Do you think they've already moved on, so it doesn't matter anyway, and that hiring an OC is independent of who the quarterback was the last 2 years?
I think that the quarterback is still the most important player on the team, but in this particular case, you got to treat Aaron like one of 53 dudes. Like, you got to stop treating it like he's got an office next to y'all, which was Denver's problem when they traded all that for Russ. So, you get an office on the second floor. Like, you're one of us. It's like no, you are one of 53. You are an important one, but you are one of 53. So no, we're not consulting you on nothing. I'm not hiring any of your boys, trading for none of your guys, unless I independently think that will make the team better. Like, so I think once you do that and sit down with your Aaron Glenn, I think it's a no-brainer. You just move on. But he seems like a guy who's going to be very comfortable doing that. He's also comes across as leader guy. Very similar to how when Sean Payton got to Denver, he did it a little too strong. Like, he just insulted Russell, I think, on and off the record, that's a little too far. You don't want to do that. But he just made it very clear, like, a dude from the Pirate movie, like, I am the captain now.
I'm the captain now.
Type of thing.
Oh, that dude. I love that guy.
Yeah. Captain Phillips.
I am the captain now. Captain Phillips was the film.
Yeah. You have to do that, I think, in New York. And you kind of got to do it like Aaron did with the media, too. Like, I know how y'all get down, and I'm not. I think he told somebody, I think it was the ESPN guy, he was like, you're not about to get me. When they were trying to bait him into giving an answer about a quarterback commitment one way or the other. I think that's how you got to do it in that particular situation. Like, come in and very clearly, punch your roommate in the face, prison type of energy. Like, no, I'm here.
Right.
I am
established
the
dominance.
guy. Yeah, establish dominance. Establish who's the adult in the room. I am the voice. Blah blah blah. Like, so I actually feel good about it because Aaron seems equipped to do that because he's not just like some hot shot schematics guy. Because I think that the Jets don't need that.
And aesthetically, you can't have Aaron versus Aaron because even in our discussion, it's like we're using the first name, and it's like, wait, which one are we talking about here? So it's like I think Aaron, the coach. If I'm in one world, I would remove Aaron, the quarterback, ASAP. I get that creates a big hole, but then like you create dominance, you wipe this part of the Jets away, and you start anew, and you stick around for a long time, and you find a new quarterback. That's what I do. I don't build the team around Aaron Rodgers.
On Tuesday, I thought.
We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
I've thought about it more. It's like I think they, more than any team in the league, need an absolute
You're flip-flopping, Ceci.
No, they need like a psychological enema.
Oh,
This town needs an enema. All right, here we go. Last one. Ben Johnson. Here we go. Former Detroit OC, now Chicago Bears head coach. I give it I'm a tough grader. 7.6. It's the best one. Got some of that, Mark. I think he's got some of that intense introvert energy. Some of that Lee Harvey Oswald Riz, Sestog, from his opening press conference, but that's fine. It's okay to be nervous. I do want to can you show him when he walked into Hallis Hall? This is a clip that we didn't get to last week. You can pause it there. The only thing I really want to point out there is that is like the default young coach guy look these days. It's the tight Dockers, really like fitted Dockers pants showing off a svelte figure, the clean Oxford up top, and then the white sneakers or whatever. That is kind of that's the uniform, I feel like, these days.
It's a clean look. I can't neg it at all. The more you hear about Ben Johnson,
Needs a chastity class, but otherwise very
yes,
nice
he could use that, but we all could. We all could. There is an intensity to him, and that you hear that he's intense with his players. That there is he's maybe like when you watch him here, it looks sort of like a dad walking around like an autumnal like town or something. But that's not
he's
what
literally
he is.
in front of his wife and children as he's giving the speech. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think this is. I would have gone Aaron Glenn number one. I know why you couldn't probably.
Because of Jourdan, yeah.
But yeah, because of Jourdan. But I think Ben Johnson, he's probably the one that's the most exciting new face. And I guess the question for me is, as head coach, when you're pulled out of your lab, can you come up with an offense that's as creative and eye-pleasing as what happened over the last 2 seasons in Detroit? And you've got to make the quarterback work. Like there's a lot of pressure. I think there's more pressure on Ben Johnson than a bunch of these other guys to make it work right away. Because I think last offseason, people were saying the Bears are a sneaky playoff team, or not even sneaky, and we've got all these pieces, and it didn't work. And so, can you make it all work? It's a big tall order. You're also inside your own division that you were in before. Something about that always kind of freaks me out a little bit. That you've got to go play the Detroits, but you do know that division better. I mean, who is Ben Johnson? Like, I guess he's one of the biggest question marks of this list. Who is he?
First of all, 2 things to say on this. One, never underestimate the command and gravitas and power a good hat can provide you.
Catfish.
Yeah. Also, feel a kinship with Ben Johnson as a fellow hat fisher. But I would say you can see who he is because he is one of these modern play callers who I like to refer to as a heart on his sleeve play caller, which means you see his personality and you see the way that he reaches and connects with people by the way that he calls games. And he's got big FU energy. And I think his players are really going to love that. Like he's going to find what works against you, no matter what it is, run, pass, trick play, whatever. And he's going to call the thing that psychologically messes with you and depletes you on the other side the most. He's done this his entire time in Detroit. And I think that players really resonate with that and they buy into that. He might not be the overtly like Dan Campbell-y kind of like, you know, automatically just by shaking his hand, you're like, okay, I'm bought in on leader of men, whatever that even means. But like this guy, the way that he operates, the way that he shows his work, former math guy, the way that he shows his work on the page and on his call sheet, to me, players will see that because they see everything in those locker rooms and they see everything in those buildings. And I think they will really resonate with that. That's why, among other things, in terms of my belief in Ben Johnson, that's one of the things that I'm sort of on the detective trail on this about, is how he shows who he is through that body of work, how he creates and how he calls games.
Very good. Well, my turn took about 31 minutes longer than I was expecting.
That was the episode.
Yeah, let's take a break, and then everybody else will get about 2 minutes each for theirs. Stay right there. Calling all hedonists. I, Dan Hanzus and Marc Sessler are taking heed the call into the real world with a pair of live shows in New Orleans. Thursday, February 6th, one at 5 p.m. and another one at 7 p.m. Come to one show. Hell, come to both shows. They won't be exactly the same. Or maybe they will. I don't know, Mark. What do you tell me?
I don't think they could ever be the same. That's not how we do things. I mean, in both versions, we're going to take you around the league as we always do with depth, clarity, and just a little touch of mirth. So come see the OG Heroes along with some familiar friends in person at Sports Drink, Cafe, and Comedy Club in New Orleans, Dan.
Yes, that's Sports Drink, Cafe, and Comedy Club on Thursday, February 6th. Get your tickets at the link in the podcast description. Experience the show the football cognoscente does not want you to see. The best app for your big game party is on your phone. That's right. You and all your friends could be feasting on Underdog. Ride together on stats like passing yards, first touchdowns, interceptions, and so much more. If you or your friends haven't joined Underdog yet, start playing today. Sign up with the code HTC, and new users can receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash, or refer a friend and get $50 in bonus cash for yourself, for our U.S. audience only. All right, we are back. We're back, Mike.
Yeah, so while we were going there, I hadn't heard of this movie, Can't Hardly Wait, so I was just reading the plot here. Fascinating movie that I will try and go watch at some point. There's a lot that goes on, but something that stuck out, this is just from the Wikipedia synopsis of the film, is apparently two nerds that are antisocial get trapped in a bathroom and just is like, hey, we're here, so let's have sex.
Yeah,
This is a high school movie, right? It's the high school graduation party. Not to say people don't have sex in high school, but just
that's
like
the setting.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
That is one of
movie.
that's a the character. One is like the bookish girl, and then the white boy having an identity crisis and trying to be like a hip hop dude. Like they're total opposites attract, and then they have a moment, and it's one of the many incredible incendiary plot lines, Jourdan, in the Jennifer Love Hewitt vehicle, Can't Hardly Wait.
Sounds like someone could have used a chastity clasp, you know?
There you go.
Would have avoided.
I'd argue she's not
so
that
much.
bookish. Right?
You're right, Mark. All right, Mike, why don't you share your topic that has nothing to do with the thing that's happening a week from Sunday?
Which is what?
It is a football game.
Yeah, an important one.
Yes,
a championship one, even.
Yeah, a one with expensive tickets. Very, very unfortunate how expensive it is to go. Very corporate event. Anyway,
Sure is.
My topic, it's apparently the security's not great either when they have it in New Orleans. They're just letting anybody run onto the field.
Anybody?
Anybody. A couple of ham and eggers just roaming around, talking to Terrell Suggs.
Yeah, letting the lights just go out while Beyonce's performing just is not a great operation down there. Big Easy. My topic is supporting the quarterback. I'm glad you asked me about Pete Carroll, because when I was listening to his Raiders intro, it made me come back to this. Like Pete, he views the quarterback position as like super hard, like hard as shit, like the hardest position there is. And so he's looking for a guy who can play it well. Obviously, he's got a great track record with that. But the way he views it is, I think, the way that more of us, media, fans, coaches, whoever, should view like how support of the quarterback should look. Like his view is that, all right, this job is hard as hell. So my job is to do everything possible to make sure your job is easy. I guess the easiest thing that you do is your job. That's my job to make that happen for you. You know, and I feel like the way we view support with the quarterbacks has become like a broken discourse a little bit. And I think like the way I'm just saying generally, like Caleb and Jaden Daniels, for instance, like Caleb was framed as like, he's going to this great quote unquote situation. It's like how we frame what support and what the situation is good based on is just, I think, really, really off. Like if I had to rank it, if I had to do my own power rankings, like Dan just did with quarterbacks, with the head coaches, I feel like I would put play caller and O-line far ahead of like your receivers and your skill players, you know? And I feel like that's how we got to the point of the discourse where it's like Caleb's walking into the best situation a rookie's ever had because he had Rome, he had Keenan, you know, forget who else. I'm missing a receiver over there. Oh, DJ Moore. So it's like, oh, look at these weapons he has. And it's like, nah, man, your play caller is your weapon, your first weapon. Your O-line is your second weapon. And I think that that's how I remember Tom Brady recently just like kind of bitching about young quarterbacks getting thrown in early and just how we're doing them a disservice, all this stuff, which we are. But I think the reason that these guys are coming in and flopping kind of quick is because of the lack of support, because how we view it is wrong. It's like, I need a receiver to help this guy. And it's like, no, you probably need a better scheme tailored to what he can do. You probably need better O-linemen. You probably need a better run game. You probably need a better defense. You probably need to make sure your special teams is nails. Like it's literally everything other than who he throws the ball to sometimes that can be the primary means of support. So I think that when we talk about it through the lens of skill players, that's how we get to like, I think tangentially related to that is like the idea that the term game manager is an insult. Because no, that's actually like, if you can manage a game, great. That's great. You'll probably get to where you want to be as an organization if your guy can manage a game, because that takes many forms. It's not just check down Charlie or whatever. It's just doing whatever we need to win. I think how Jalen Hurts is being framed is like Dan's favorite coach, Nick Sirianni, he's articulating the point poorly, but I understand because he's just like, all he does is win. He's a winner. I don't understand why anyone hates Jalen because he's a winner. Like, Nick, that's stupid. You clearly understand why people have criticisms of Jalen. The games are on television. We can see, but like Jalen is
every single one.
Yeah, they're all on television. Sirianni's just being disingenuous. But the point is that he and other people make with Jalen is like he does whatever it requires that day for us to win. He has his drawbacks, but like I think game manager is not derogatory. I think like that's actually what we should be looking for when we're looking at a young quarterback or free agency or a guy we want to be able to win multiple playoff games. Like I think that how we view support of quarterbacks really needs to like be overhauled. And then my last thing on this is like support of the quarterback is also very mental, very, very mental. And that comes back to Pete too. Like his one of his superpowers, I think, is being able to instill confidence in others. And if your quarterback is not confident, he don't think you believe in him, whether game manager or not, he will go out there and shit the bed, like more often than not. And I feel like there's plenty of examples of that in the league. But to use a non-Pete one, I feel like the obvious is Tua. Like he just did not believe that Brian Flores thought he was worth a damn. And Brian didn't. He got a coach who did, thought he was worth a damn, instilled that confidence in him, and then he started balling, So as I looked around the league and I'm thinking of non-important game in New Orleans topics like that, like how we view support of the quarterback and what that even means has really been on my mind lately.
And like, look what happened to Caleb Williams. Like, you've got a defensive coach, and I think there's a reason to be concerned about the infrastructure of a defensive-minded head coach. Where if your offensive coordinator succeeds, bang, he's head coaching somewhere else, and that's transition. But if you're Caleb Williams, like your offensive coordinator there was problems with the players. To your point about play callers, like they wanted him to coach them harder, and that you don't hear that too often overtly out in the press. And then he's scapegoated, fairly, and fired. And then the head coach is fired. And then you look around the league at some of these quarterbacks that were comeback players this year, like a Baker and a Sam Darnold, and it's their early careers were 5 offensive coordinators, 3 head coaches, 6 different quarterback coaches. Like your support staff is changing every day. And we all know that if your bosses or your super boss changes and everyone wants to come in and alter everything, like you feel floating as an employee, and young quarterbacks need the opposite. To your point, I think that's a good topic.
I just wanted to say one of Pete Carroll's contemporaries is Jim Harbaugh. And if you follow like the quotes that Jim Harbaugh gives about his quarterback, from Justin Herbert way back to Alex Smith when he started in San Francisco, he will talk that guy up every second, every chance he gets to the media that this guy is a special one-of-one type talent. And I think it's the same thing, right, Mike, where it's like he's trying to instill that belief and even using the media as well in addition to anything that he's saying or installing behind the scenes for the quarterback.
Yeah, and then listen to what his play caller, Greg Roman, said when they got there. It's like, all right, maybe this was who said the imagine Herbert with a run game thing? Was that? I think that was Greg Roman when he got hired. But it's the idea. It's like, I don't need to just have you just throw it all over the yard all the time. Sometimes we may need to do that. But like I think it was Roman. It makes sense.
It was Greg Roman. Yes, he did say that.
Yeah, it's like the idea of like, imagine if we supported you better. That's essentially what he was saying. Imagine if we supported you better. And then I was at the owners meetings last year where Jim Harbaugh said the thing about how O-linemen are basically weapons. You can see like my right arm or something in the clip. Like I remember him talking about that, and I was like, yo, yes, this is it. Because at that time they were having a kind of the Sewell Chase debate. I think it was like Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors was kind of the choice there. And he was like, yeah, he basically said we're taking an O-lineman because those guys are weapons. Like, and how Jim, I'm glad you brought him up, Dan. He's a really good example too. He talks about Herbert like he's his favorite son. Like he'll like worship the ground he walks on because he realizes we have to support this guy. Because eventually he's going to throw for 400, and sometimes he might need to throw for $120 on the road in the cold weather or whatever. I need him to be confident in doing both of those, and however that looks around him, run game, O-line, whatever. Like I think the support is like so important, and how your head coach views that will determine a lot of like your success as a franchise. It's not just can you get a guy who can make all these throws, that's great, but like, can you make the game as easy as possible? And that's why I think I think of Pete when I look at the Raiders, like when they did win that game 11 years ago or whatever, they won by 35 and they scored literally on every phase. They scored on defense, offense, special teams, and had a safety. You know, they won as a team, not just like the quarterback did all the work.
Yeah, that was Mark, another game we were at where that safety, where the ball gets, I think, fired over Peyton Manning's head. You knew the game was over at that very moment. Like one of the more lopsided
seconds,
games.
And we were in that end zone. Seconds into that, we were not allowed onto the field on that contest for to everyone's benefit.
We were not. We did not attempt it. All right, Mark, you're up.
That was cheating. That whole conversation was cheating. Mark, you're up.
Okay. So like when I first moved to LA, right? Yeah. I didn't know anyone. I had no friends. I had like a job downtown, but I lived in like Culver City, and I used to go to this like Starbucks all the time and just hang out. And you know, it's like I would almost talk to anyone that would talk to me. It's like that was that kind of phase in life. But I met this young guy. He was from some part of India or something, and he had just moved to LA for a job, and he was telling me, or was trying to get me to come over to his house to have his wife make dinner. And no, that didn't happen, but I was just sort of asking him about his life and stuff, and he basically said that like he had fallen in love like back in his homeland with someone else, but that his parents had forced him into an arranged marriage. And I'm not making a commentary about arranged marriage at all, but he sort of said like it's been really tough on both of us because neither one of us feel like we're in love. It's just been forced upon us. And the more he's talked about it, it's just like, I'm not sure that's how you'd want to spend your life, because I think the NFL has an arranged marriage as well. And think about it this way. It is between us, the viewer of football, and Tom Brady. Because imagine that the traditional minded parents are Fox, okay? Fox are the parents that are not going to bend off their vision of how life works. Forcing us, the viewer, to marry Tom Brady as Fox's lead color man when everyone knows we were in love with Greg Olsen. And there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can do about it. And I'm not here, like, honestly, to slander Tom Brady, because, like, it's a hard job, and I could see him growing, I think, along the way. And so it's not really about, like, the wife that you're stuck with or the husband that you're stuck with. It is the process. It's how we got here. This was on my radar big time last offseason, was for a lot of us, that the best color commentator was just displaced for a name. And, like, look around at the big five: Troy Aikman, Tony Romo, Kirk Herbstreit, Chris Collinsworth, and Tom Brady. I mean, as far as we know, they are not going anywhere. And I think Greg Olsen is as good as any one of these guys. And I think here's the worst part. He knows it too. They treated him unfairly. He's still working for them honorably, but stuck on the lesser games. And he's not thrilled about it at all. And I don't blame him. And I want to play this clip from WCNC in Charlotte, their NBC station. Their sports director, Nick Carboni, asked Olsen. And what I love about Olsen is that he is not some company shill who will not speak. Listen to what he said.
You know, I'll be honest, it's hard sitting home on the couch watching the games, and you know, you're sitting there and you're living and dying with every broadcast, and you're sitting there and you're dissecting everything that's said and done, and what would you have said and what would you have done. So yeah, listen, I've been very honest. My goal getting into this was to not just call regional 1 o'clock games and just be happy to be there. You know, I've called the highest games. We've called some of the biggest games in NFL history, some of the biggest audiences in NFL history. To not do it anymore is hard. It's not ideal, but listen, wherever it is, whatever network it's on, whatever opportunity is there, my goal is still to just continue to show that I'm as good, if not better, than anybody in this industry, and I just need a chair.
I really
love that.
I appreciate he is just speaking from his heart. And I get riled up when there's something unjust about it. Like, Greg Olsen still has a good life. He's still on TV. He's handsome. He's amazing. Like, he's announcing football. He's making big money. But all that is beside the point, because the situation lacks integrity. And I guess it's sports announcing. There's only so much we can cry about it. But I think that there is a fire that burns in us when we get passed over for a job, by like a crush, by anything in life. And I think that, you know, we know that feeling, and that there's like a fire that burns within when that happens. And Olsen has it. And I am waiting for the day that he is put back in a major seat to do what he should be doing. Because I think Troy is always my dude, but he is my second. Olsen, I think, is maybe as good as Troy, is not better. And I think he's the best guy at this, being pushed down. And I don't like it. It's a bad look for everyone involved. That's
from
my
a different angle, Jourdan. That's good job. Good job with that one, Mark. Like, from a different angle, I wonder, if giving interviews like that and kind of subtweeting Fox during games is his way of announcing, hey, come get me when my contract's up, letting everyone know what his ambition is and how good he is. But yeah, I wonder if this is more like big picture, a Greg Olsen type who was obviously always a gifted athlete, like you said, good-looking guy. Everything's kind of come to him in his life. He's earned it, of course. He was the superstar probably of his high school, was a big star at Miami, both as a player and a recording artist, then became like a very successful NFL player, then went to the booth after his playing days were over and immediately found success and praise there. I don't get the feeling, Jourdan, that, and this isn't a put-down, I'm just being real about it, that he's probably ever been passed over in his life, really, in a lot of ways. And this has probably been a humbling thing for him as well, that to be told that we're favoring someone else over you. So it probably compounds the frustration for an Olsen type.
This is a totally, probably, perhaps unfair, like psychological dig for me to do, because I think too, some of it might come from just the situations that he's been in his professional life as a player. You know, he was kind of buried in Chicago for a while. Then he got moved to Carolina. They went on this magical run, right? Had so much fun doing it. Didn't get the win. And then everything collapsed over the next couple of years after that. And I remember standing there fighting, because yes, it almost made me cry, but fighting back my own emotion, watching him grimace and clench through tears with a broken foot and trying to go back on the field, and then talking to me in the locker room after the game about what he was willing to do, whatever the cost, because they actually had a chance at maybe going on a little bit of a journey in that year's postseason. And then nothing would ever be the same. And he didn't get to go out on his own terms. And a lot of people don't, a lot of athletes don't. But Greg still, all the same, poured so much into everything he's ever done, including the community, you know, the logo that he's wearing on his hat. I believe that is for his foundation, The Hardest Yard, where they raise millions of dollars for absolutely epic medical care for youth in the Charlotte medical system because of what happened with him and his wife and one of their sons. And it's just like he's put so much into everything he's ever done. He's gone full freaking send on everything. And this is out of his control. And I think if I'm going to psychologically dig a little bit, I think that is what is the crazy making part of this, perhaps for any athlete at the top of their position anywhere, but especially for somebody who, when he approached this broadcasting job, he went full send. He was not handed this. He did the training. He was in booths even before he retired, training. Like during bye weeks, he would go and practice, and he put in so much work. I'm not saying Tom Brady is not putting in the work. I'm just saying Greg has just a gift for this. And it must just be this feeling of like, why don't you see me? You know, like I've done everything I can. My hand is raised. Why don't you see me? And I think that a lot of us in our careers, I think, could sometimes feel like that. And I think that I can see that in Greg right now, because I do think he deserves to be calling a certain event next week. I also love the competition of this too. I mentioned this to you guys in the group chat. If I could make one more point, like one really good thing about professional athletes becoming like high level broadcasters is the competition, right? And Greg, I think, is crossing into this territory that's unprecedented, because there's always been this unwritten, but he's treating it like if he were asked about a defensive player he didn't like, for example, in Carolina, or like asked to dissect weaknesses in somebody else's game for an upcoming opponent that they were preparing for, he'd be honest, and he would, and he's being honest here, and I really like that he's doing that, because you're making it very clear there is no gray area, and also it is a message, Dan, to your point, because it's a multi-year contract that he's on, but those things don't last forever, and so he is making this statement. I would not be surprised to see the big leagues like Amazon, Netflix even start sniffing around him soon after this, and certainly after he sort of does all of these circuits in this off season to really say, like, if they're not going to take care of me and put me in the big chair, I'm going to go find a chair.
Mm-hmm. All right. Close it out, Jourdan. Something that has nothing to do with the other thing.
Could not
Justin's
be more
so mad it
opposite,
hasn't
in
happened
fact.
yet. Yeah.
This could not be more opposite, in
Okay.
fact. The Saints job search.
Yeah.
Like, we really haven't talked about this yet, and I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. Just to quickly update, the listeners and all of that. Tuesday, Mike McCarthy removed himself, I'm doing air quotes, from the coaching search. I follow a bunch of beat reporters on the scene down in New Orleans, and some of them were in Mobile this week. They sort of felt like it was like a I'm going to leave you before I get left situation, because I don't know how interested they really were in Mike McCarthy. But the Saints actually had several people drop out of the process. Joe Brady was a legitimate candidate for them and was a legitimate dropout of this process, deciding to stay in Buffalo. The Saints requested Cliff Kingsbury, who just decided, I don't want any part of that, or the big job again in general right now. And then Aaron Glenn had New Orleans scheduled on his radar, but never went, obviously, because the Jets did not let him leave the building, more of a metaphor here, because he did physically leave the building. And Aaron Glenn and Joe Brady both had really strong ties to New Orleans from previous stops, and they said, no, thank you. And so some of this is agents doing agent things, like in the McCarthy case, for example. But I just think the optics of this search is bad, and it's not a coveted job, because they had no shot at Mike Vrabel or at Ben Johnson, and they seem very secure with that. I don't even know that they pursued them very heavily, kind of understanding this just wasn't going to happen for them. And it is just not a coveted spot, in part because of the quarterback situation that seems to constantly be in question, and then also the roster, the age of the roster relative to the unceasing churn of football and its timeline moving forward. And then also the salary cap situation, still helmed by the same general manager, who sometimes people will come out and say, well, maybe he'll be moved into a different position laterally this year. And then that always seems to pop up during the coaching search, when they're like, no, it's going to be okay. Come here, work with Mickey Loomis. And then it doesn't actually happen. So it's just a weird situation over there. And they have so many big questions. Kellen Moore is the favorite for this job right now, following a certain coaching task that he has still ahead of him. But that was, you like that?
Very good.
But it is going to be interesting, because it's you don't get the sense necessarily. They could spin it however they want. You never got the sense early in this process that he was their first choice. And in fact, he was kind of out there in various channels, or agents were out there in various channels saying the Cowboys job was the one he really coveted and really wanted. And so you don't really get the sense that this is very buttoned up, much like Mark's shirt right now.
Right.
It just does. You just don't get that feeling about this job.
Here's what I would think, Mike, with this is and I'm of two minds, because there's only 32 chairs, and if you get a chance at one, you grab it. But if I'm Kellen Moore, what this team, the franchise, where they are right now, it screams we're heading towards a tank year. We're stripping this thing down. We got to finally get our books right. We got to get that top 3 pick, or maybe the number 1 pick, and get a quarterback in here. And why would you want to go into a reboot when things are this messy? Now, you can look at Dan Campbell in Detroit. That team had a lot of work to do just to get back even, but that's a hard job. It almost makes me think, and this wouldn't necessarily be fair, but I'm sure he would have been down with it because his personality type, Sky Rizzi, if you would have kept him in the post and just let him grow into the job, or just hold the fort until you make your big move in 26, perhaps. But it makes sense to me why this right now you don't want to come near this, because it just feels radioactive in terms of your chances of being successful at this moment.
Yeah, I didn't know this would be Jordan's topic, but I guess out of coincidence, I actually really looked at the Saints books last night, just because it does feel like no one wants to take that job. And oh my God.
Yeah.
It is bad.
Worse
Because
than
I went in thinking they could just do a fire sale, right? If they needed to, they just extended Kamara, so maybe not him, but Cam Jordan, Honey Badger, they just sell off everything, trot a bunch of rookies out there, eat it, not totally dissimilar from what the Rams kind of had to do after the Super Bowl. All right, we just gotta eat this a little bit for a year. Then I looked. Even if they did that, they saved $5 million if they got rid of half the damn team, because of the way the contracts are structured. So they got to kick this can down the road again, for the most part. And then you probably suck in 2026. And then you are maybe good in 2027. But if I'm the coach, it's like, okay, well, what if I go 11-23 in those 2 years? We, take an L on Thursday Night Football or something, because those, how owners are about losing on national television, right? You lose to the Saints on like Sunday Night Football. Am I just going to get fired? Like that's awful. So yeah, I can see why. I mean, the roster is like one thing with the job. It's ownership. It's, general manager. It's power structure, blah, blah, it's money. But damn, the roster still does matter. And that is easily the worst roster / cap money situation in the league. That's really, really bad over there.
Yeah, I'm looking at over the cap. And if you look at the top 10 costs in terms of players, it is a mid-tier quarterback who is not a magnet to go there. It is old players. It is Taysom Hill, who I like, but he's like your third most expensive player here, and a bunch of first-round draft picks that haven't really worked out. Like, I think if you got a bunch of coaches dropping out of the race, that's agents talking to each other, that's coaches talking to each other, that's former Saints coaches talking to people about the organization. It is ownership. Like, the number one thing I always remember from Belichick's like autobiography was like, you do not go to a place with bad ownership. And I think there's ownership questions in New Orleans. You mentioned the general manager. The Mickey Loomis thing just feels, the word I'd use, just sticky. It's just like, what are we doing here with this situation? And you go take this job, you're already on the hot seat. It isn't a breath of fresh air. You've got to figure out the money side of it. They've got to tear it down to the studs. And 2 years into your point, you're probably gone for someone that they like better. I mean, to have like Mike McCarthy, they didn't want Mike McCarthy from what I read too, that there was some issues there. But to have all these names not want the New Orleans Saints job after the Sean Payton era, like, things are not good. That's bad. That's toxic.
And it's a cool city with a great fan base and a passionate fan base. And if you can succeed there, you're a god. Like, it's cool just thinking about the potential. I think that Mickey Loomis, and this is not reporting, this is just like what I kind of see in their books over the last several years. It's almost like, those not, everyone says, okay, I've got like a tangle of necklaces or a tangle of headphone cords or whatever. And at some point, I'm just going to throw it away because I can't possibly untangle it. And I can't remember how all these pieces just came together or whatever. That's kind of the situation happening here. But the problem is I don't know that anybody wants to take that on as a candidate in the front office perspective. Those are even harder jobs to get and because those guys are often longer tenured than the head coaches are. But the tangle and the knots within their financial structure and their roster structure right now, it's almost like, and I don't give ownership a pass here at all, but it's almost like, okay, well, that guy's the only one who remembers how these all got tangled up in the first place. He's the only one left. So how the hell are we going to bring someone in here and just get this fixed? Because we can't even remember, which knot is which. And because it's so messy at this point. And I think it puts you in this paralyzed situation as an organization, which is a real shame because, again, it is a gloried and storied organization, and it is it's a shame to see, and I think it's a tough situation too. Dan, you mentioned the Lions situation. I also thought about the Commanders. It's not as simple there as just getting a quarterback, because in those situations too, there was a collaborative partnership formed between head coach and general manager. They came in together too, or as close to as possible, and this partnership does not exist in its current form in New Orleans. You're coming in where somebody has already created the mess, and you're not making a clean break in that case.
Tough, but we're going to be in New Orleans next week, and any Saints fans understand that we're rooting for your team.
You should coach the Saints.
Yeah, sports drink, comedy club. We'll be there, Mark.
We will,
talking about things pertaining to Sunday, next Sunday, a week from Sunday, and
something
all
other
things. Day? Maybe, just maybe, the new head coach of the Saints will be a conversation point. If one were to deign that a job they would like to actually accept.
If Kellen doesn't take that job, they're heading for like a what's that guy's name from the Texans? He was the head coach. He was the Ravens D-line coach forever.
David Coley. That's what they need. They need a David Coley to just come in there and tank for a year and then fire him.
Just a fall
I've never heard Justin more excited at any point in the history of Be the Call.
He's got the solution.
David Coley did it.
No,
they need their own guy who's willing to just like get a year's worth of head coaching experience and then get kicked out of the door while
Sounds
they rebuild.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, David got like a 5-year deal or something like that. I think a bunch of the years are guaranteed. Like, he's been a position coach forever. So if you're just looking for a payday, say you were a head coach.
If you're looking for a paycheck,
Mark, this is what we talked about
this is actually a fantastic way to make a ton of money. Like, I'm apathetic about being a head coach.
Mark.
4-year, 5-year contract, vanish to like the Virgin Islands.
If you want to make a bunch of money, guaranteed, lose all semblance of self and any dignity and like your competitive spirit, just have it put like that thing that they put over a torch flame, like extinguish it immediately. That seems like a good place.
I mean, but like Jordan said too, you know, if you do make it work though, you're a god.
Yeah, then you're a god.
You just you have some fun down there. Don't get blown out and beat the Falcons with some regularity.
Times.
Yeah, like that's one of the places where they like rivalry still like really is a thing. Like you go down there and beat the Falcons a few times. Like people will love you down there. You never have to pay for a drink again, even if you do go like 11-23.
What is success for the 2025 Saints? Split with the Falcons, win the home game. Hopefully it's a Thursday night game. Probably a good chance of that. You know, steal a couple here and there, win five games and beat the Falcons once.
Yeah, like calling Jeff Saturday. Your phone is ringing. You're the guy.
Let's keep Jeff where Jeff is.
Okay.
Mark, how would you beat the Falcons?
I'd be fired by 2 days into training camp, first of all, but I'd still have signed the contract.
Yeah, guaranteed bread, man. Yeah. Take it.
Right.
Although it's the optics.
They're like, do you know how to organize a training camp practice? Not at all. I don't even know where the horns are.
Well, hey, I mean, Mike McDonald.
Gotta know where the horns are.
They hired Mike McDonald. He's like 37. He basically also hired a coach to coach him in Leslie Frazier. So there you go. You don't know what you're doing? Hire someone as like one of those consultant gigs or whatever. Yeah,
that's
hire
question.
someone to coach the coach. You know,
who would you hire? Any NFL person, past, probably present tense, right? Not they haven't, gone the way of deceased. But
you could say died. Yeah.
Can I pick a person that died?
I'm too tripped up over the thing we're not supposed to say. Now I'm knotted around, much like the Saints salary cap. Who would you pick, Mark?
I'll pick a dead person, and it's not. It won't be the one named after a trophy, or in reverse. I'd go Marty Schottenheimer. I think he can kind of do it all. He seems modern. He understands the modern offense.
That would be like a reanimated Marty Schottenheimer winning a Super Bowl. Be kind of terrifying, but really cool.
Circle.
Activating alarm system. Activating alarm system. Activating alarm system.
What is this?
Activating alarm system.
It's like 15 different alarm alert sirens all stacked on top of each other.
What's
said
happening?
it. You said it.
What?
You said it's Marty
Yes,
Schottenheimer winning a...
Oh, shit!
Yes, you did.
70 plus minutes in.
The moment I was waiting for.
That was for you, Justin.
Thanks.
Totally on purpose.
You didn't even know you did it.
I had no idea. I was just hung up on the idea of the specter of Schottenheimer on the sideline. It's like an Unsolved Mysteries episode.
Well, it kind of works because
we had to get all the way into corpse reanimation for Dan to slip up. So
we got there.
Good job by all.
Good drop, Justin. All right. Great job by all. We've been doing this Thursday show since August, and thank you so much to Jourdan and Mike getting us all the way to the finish line. We'll be in New Orleans for our preview show next week, and then I guess we'll all circle back, Jourdan, together as a fivesome. A couple weeks after the Super Bowl, we have some business to settle up, including a trophy that needs to be handed out. For certain fearless predictions. So all that coming up. Again, get tickets to see us live in New Orleans and join us at the Doghouse next week for 3 shows. It's going to be a great time. All right. Bye, gang. Heed the call, everybody.